Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. My name is Maria, and I am a support technician at Thor 3D. Today's webinar, we will be discussing how to combine scans made in different modes in Calibry Nest, our software, as well as how to combine scans made from two different scanners, from the Calibry and the Calibry Mini. So before we begin, just a reminder that we do have other webinars as well as other videos on our YouTube channel. If you want a general overview of what the Calibry scanners can do, as well as an in-depth showcase of what the Calibry Mini does, we do have those videos available on our channel. The regular Calibry is generally used for medium-sized objects, so that is anywhere from 30 centimeters up to 2 meters. The first object I will be showing you is a car bumper that was scanned in both marker mode as well as in geometry mode, and I will show you which sections were done with which mode. And the second part, I will be showing you how this plastic skull here, so it's a replica skull, it's not real, but how this skull was scanned with both the Calibry and the Calibry Mini to get the fine details on the face here, and how we can easily combine them in Calibry Nest. So as with any purchase of any of the Calibry scanners, the Calibry Nest software does come with the bundle. It is also available for download on our website. Alright, so the car bumper I will be showing you was scanned with the regular Calibry, and the skull was scanned with Calibry and Calibry Mini. Now the Calibry Mini's field of view is much smaller, so it is recommended for smaller objects to get that fine detailization. Okay, and now you see on the screen a photo of the car bumper that I scanned. So as you can see on the left and the right sections where there would be the front lights, there are a lot of geometric features for the scanner to easily grasp. So those sections can easily be scanned in geometry mode in Calibry. So now on the front section, the middle front section here, you do see that there's a lot of flat parts, so there are not enough geometric features for the scanner to grasp. Now, for example, if you were scanning a whole car, it would definitely be a good idea to scan it in marker mode, as majority of the car, the front, the sides, the doors, don't have much geometry, so especially combining kind of all of those scans in marker mode would be the best. So this car bumper can be scanned it can be done in one scan, so you can place markers all over it. So you can see that only about 2/3 of this bumper is covered in markers. When I scanned the bumper, I did apply markers all over it, so it is possible to do it in one big scan. You can also do it in sections and then align it in Calibry Nest. And that is what I will be showing you today. So let me go ahead and switch to Calibry Nest. Okay, and now you should be seeing the interface of Calibry Nest. So I scanned this section here, so the side section where there's a lot of geometry, in geometry mode. So the scanner was able to grasp those features quite easily. Okay, and then I also scanned the whole surface in marker mode, and you can see some of the tracking markers on the surface, and I also scanned this bottom section additionally, also in marker mode. So as I have already post-processed each of these scans, which means that I have run the algorithm of registration and finalization on all three of these scans. So I have created a mesh model of all three of these. Okay, so at this point, as the Calibry nest doesn't automatically save your results, you can go ahead and right-click and save all of your results kind of separately in any format you want. You can also save the entire project with all of the changes you made and any of the multiple results that you generated by running the finalization algorithm. Okay, so generally, most people, if they scan something in marker mode, they can easily align it in marker mode, and the markers help the overlapping sections come together quite easily. Okay? But if you have a piece scanned in geometry mode, like this side, it can also be quite easily combined using the same algorithm. So I ran the results for all three of these already, and now I can go ahead and select all three of my projects that I want to align. And at this point, we have this Align by Points button that should pop up. So I go ahead and click on it, and it takes me to the alignment window. Okay, I can set whichever piece I want. Usually I try to set the biggest piece as my base, and then I can add parts to it. Now, for today I'm going to be combining just these three pieces. You can always combine 2 scans, 5 scans, 10 scans. It does not matter. The same technique will be applied to all of them. So here are 2 scans that were made in marker mode. So this part and the bottom part, and since you can see there are overlapping sections. So at this point, I just go ahead and press this button, Add to Base. Okay, and it automatically combines those scans by their overlapping markers. Quite easy. I don't have to do anything. I just have to add the 2 layers together. Now, our geometry section has to be added in geometric alignment. Now, to align pieces in geometry mode, you have to select at least 3 common points that our 2 scans have in common. I usually try to space these points quite far apart so that the algorithm has more information to combine. So I just apply these dots by double-clicking my mouse, like this. If I don't like where I have placed a certain point, I can always go back, double click on that point, and it disappears. Okay? And on the right hand side here, just drag that here. On the right hand side, we can see the preliminary view of how your alignment will be coming together. So if I'm happy with how this will be looking once I combine them, I'm happy with the dot placement, then it looks pretty good. I can always add more than 3 points. I can add 6 alignment points. I can add 10, but the algorithm will still kind of calculate it from the base 3 that we set. So as you can see, it will be combining quite well together, so we don't need to place any more points. So it looks pretty good in our preliminary view here. And I also add that to base now. Okay, so now we see a preliminary view of how our 3 scans will be coming together. So this is still the preliminary view. We haven't combined the meshes yet. At this point is where we will be running the multiple registration and finalization algorithms. So if you remember, we generated each separate result here to help us kind of to help us align. So running the same algorithm for all three will generate one solid mesh of all of your selected aligned scans. Now, depending on the size of all of your scans, plus the speed of your laptop or computer, as you can see, I have opened up the memory tab so you can see how much of my computer's resources are currently being used. Okay. So initially when I made this model, I made it in about 1 millimeter of a combined mesh. Okay. Now that did take about 15 minutes total to combine all three of these scans. So I'm going to be saving us a little bit of time, and I will be showing you the already finished results. So I ran the algorithm multiple times and I generated several results. So let's take a look at the difference in what setting different resolutions will do for your finalized mesh. So this was the result that was made when I made the setting for 1 millimeter, and that model did take 15 minutes to finalize and generate. You can see a lot of the detail. You can see it, both the marker mode and the geometry mode came together really seamlessly. It looks really good. I also ran the algorithm here at 1.5. You don't really see a big difference, just your model does way less. And here it is at 2 millimeters, and that 2 millimeter model took me about 8 minutes to generate. So depending on how low you set the resolution will determine how long the algorithm will generate your finalized mesh. So you can always play around with that and see kind of how much detailization you're willing to spare for the sake of faster processing. As a reminder, the lowest possible resolution for the regular Calibry is a 0.6. So of course it is possible to combine all of these scans in 0.6 to get the absolute kind of crisp clarity, but then again it would take up more time and more of your computer's resources. Possibly it could take anywhere 15-20 minutes depending on the speed of your computer. So those are the main factors to consider when you are merging scans. Also, you can see going back to each of my pieces, my base scan is about 4,000 frames, my geometry section is about 3,000 frames, so the weight of each of your individual scans also does influence the speed of your finalized combined mesh. So if you are combining many pieces that have a lot of frames each, then of course to combine all of that data would take substantially more of your laptop's resources and your time. If you're curious about the minimum specifications necessary to run all of our scanners as well as Calibry Nest, we do have that link available on our website. Okay. So please go ahead, leave any of your questions or comments in the YouTube chat, and I will be happy to answer them. If there are no questions, let me go ahead and go on to... Oh, okay, we have a very good question from the chat. When would there be a back button? We are working on creating such a function for the next release of Calibry Nest to be able to return a few steps in processing of your model. So rest assured that is currently in the works. When that version will be released, at this time we don't know for sure, but it will be coming soon. Okay, very good question regarding accuracy. So, for example, if I want to see how close to reality this our finalized mesh is, I can always use any of my tools on the side here in Nest. For example, the ruler. I can place 2 points anywhere on my model, and it will measure the distance, and you can compare it to the actual object that you have. Now when you are aligning, you can see that all of the pieces came together quite nicely. If we go back to each individual scan, we can see how they looked, and since there are no ripples kind of between where the scans would have combined, it looks pretty good. So we do have that ruler option to measure any points on your model. We also have this option at the very bottom called the geodesic distance, and that can measure kind of points along the curvature of any of the sides of your model. And how that works is also shown in our manual. And you can easily access the manual to read about any of the features in Calibry Nest. You can just pop open the help option, press F1, it goes to the manual, or you can also click on the manual section in our under the download section in on our website. Okay. So to save my computer's resources, I am going to go ahead and close all of the scans that I currently have open. I can just go ahead and load in the next all of the other scans I will be working with to this list, but the more scans and more projects I have open at any time in this tree does consume more of my computer's resources. So if I am finished with all of those results, I try to close them out. Okay. Okay, please give me a moment to go ahead and pop open the other scans. Okay, we have a very good question. How do I remove the reference points? So the green dots that you were seeing on the surface of the models, when you save that result, that mesh, as an STL or as an OBJ, it does automatically remove them. Those are just reference points for you to work with while you are in Calibry Nest. Now, if you need to remove them at any time while you're still working on the model, I can go ahead and show you that as soon as I load in the scan. Right now I'm loading in about 6 different scans, so it can take a few moments. We are also, in our next Calibry Nest update, we are working on a feature to help load in multiple projects faster. So that is something we are also working on. It is taking a couple of moments to load in all of my scan data, as I am simultaneously live streaming, so that is taking up quite a bit of my laptop's resources. So apologies for that. While that final scan is loading, let me go ahead and address the newest question we have regarding how to make better models ready for 3D printing. So once you have a result generated, you can save that mesh as an STL or an OBJ, depending on what program you will be loading it into afterwards. So that is where we recommend that you can export that STL or that OBJ into other software. For example, MeshLab or Geomagic or any of those other kind of programs for finalizing really crisp mesh, and that is where you can generate kind of models perfect for 3D printing. So these are just, Calibry Nest just generates kind of the initial STL and OBJ files that can then be post-processed further. And regarding those other programs, we do also collaborate with those manufacturers, so you can purchase different bundles with discounted prices depending on which software you need to use. So coming back to our model with these markers on the surface. So if you are working on the model and you need to remove these reference points, those can easily be removed. If we go back to the actual STL, the merged STL that I had saved, those reference points automatically disappeared. Now you can see on the finalized model that you can still see some of the markers on the surface, and I saved that quite deliberately. When you are running the finalized mesh, you can always check this box to remove markers and set the specific radius depending on if you were using square markers or if you were using circle markers. If I quickly pop open the frames here of the bumper, you can actually see that when this bumper was scanned, it was covered in a combination of completely circular markers that were cut out completely, but also some square markers that still had this white rim on the outside. Now, we just kind of covered the bumper that we have here in whichever markers we had available. The marker radius itself is the same, so the scanner still sees them exactly the same, be they if they have that white rim around them or not. But the issue is if you are using that combination of different markers, then on your finalized mesh you would have to set different parameters to remove markers. So if they were completely circular without that white rim, white edge, then you would have to be setting it to 9. If you had, for example, those square markers with the edge, you would need to set that radius higher. So because the bumper that we have here was kind of covered in a combination, if I would set that radius too low or too high, which that would mean that it would remove some of those markers, but not all of them, still leaving the edges or some of the holes depending on the radius that I set. So ideally, if you are covering something in markers, please cover it in one kind of marker. So either just the completely kind of circle ones that don't have any white rim, or all of them in that with that square white rim. That way that when you run the algorithm to remove them, it would be removing the whole surface. So as you can see on the finalized mesh, you can actually see the different combination of some of the perfectly circular markers as well as kind of those larger square ones. So that is why you should use only one kind of marker. That way it would be easier for the algorithm to actually remove them. And coming back to removing just the kind of green reference points that you are seeing on the first models. So those as I said, those green reference points automatically disappear. Those are just for working in the software. What you can do just to remove them so you don't have to look at them, I can select any of my removing tools on the side here. For example, I really like to use the Marquee double-sided brush. So this is a brush that just removes any sections of the mesh that you don't need. So it's just like an eraser. Okay. And what I can do, so that if I just move the eraser, it will just cut out a section in my mesh. But if I select this tool again and I hold down the Shift button, then I would be selecting just my green reference points. And then when I hit delete, it will remove only those reference points. But it does not remove the markers on the mesh, because that was what had to be pressed during the finalization algorithm. So you still see kind of the markers on the mesh that I didn't remove deliberately. But those reference points can be removed using your eraser tools. Any other questions about the marker bumper scans before I move on to my next model? let's go ahead and move on to my next model. You go ahead and close our bumper scans to save on resources. And like I said before, my computer is kind of slowing down quite a bit because I have so many projects open and also because I am simultaneously streaming. So, give it a second. Let's go ahead and close those out. Okay, so the next object I will be taking a look at is this plastic replica skull. So he's not real, he's very plastic. So this was done by making several scans. There were several general scans of the whole head shape that were done with the regular Calibry to get all of the multiple sides. And since you do see a lot of kind of flat, rounded sections without much geometry, especially from the back of our scans, let me pop these open. Okay, so in order to scan that, there was actually additional geometry placed around this object. So there were just crumpled pieces of paper to kind of maintain that geometry. You can also scan such an object in marker mode, so you can place markers on the floor around it, and that can be used to kind of hold tracking so that the scanner can still see the object. So here we have multiple scans that were done from all of the different sides. So here we have a scan that was done of the front and top section. Then we have kind of as it was placed on the side. Here's the other side. Okay. And here is the bottom section. Okay. And then finally we have the Calibry mini scan of just the front features, and you can definitely see those very prominently. And every scan, depending on which scanner was used, they would be listed in our project tree. So you can see the ones done with Calibry are clearly labeled Calibry in our dark blue, and the Calibry mini scan is labeled in our light blue. And whichever scan I select, you can actually see at the bottom, okay, the name and what was the serial number of the scanner that was used. So for example, these were done with the regular Calibry, and it has one serial number attached. Okay, and then the Calibry Mini was, of course, a different scanner. Okay, you can see I have already post-processed the results for each of these scans. Now, if I pop open the frames for a moment, just to show you what the setup looked like. Okay. You can see that there was crumpled paper placed around the skull so that geometry tracking would not be lost. So whenever you are scanning something that has a lot of flat sections, this is what we recommend so that the tracking will not be lost and so you would have a good result. So I have already cut off all of that excess geometry from my results, and I have run the finalization algorithm for each of my results, and you just see the model. Okay, and now since all of these scans were done using geometry mode, we can select them all and then align them in geometry. I finalized each of my Calibry results using the default Calibry resolution. I actually increased it a little bit. I did process all of those scans in 08, just so that the processing of each of those pieces would be a little faster. The Calibry Mini, as it is intended for smaller objects and has a smaller field of view, that scan was of course processed with the lower resolution of 03. So the lowest resolution we generally recommend if you are using the Calibry Mini is 02, or the lowest 0.15. So this specific scan, I finalized it in 03, and you can still see a lot of the features and kind of all of the dents that the Calibry Mini is really good for grasping those details. So now let's combine all of these scans. So I already finalized all of my results and I cleaned them all up. Again, I select all of my projects that I want to combine, and that pops open our alignment algorithm. Okay. And like we did before, we would need to find at least 3 common points on each scan for the algorithm to combine them. And once again, try to space these out so that the algorithm has more data to work with. Put that in there, put that there. And we can always look at the preliminary view on the left to see how it will be, to see how it's shaping up, if we need to place more points or if we need to change the points. Okay. Okay. Very good question. If I want to scan the skull from the bottom, let me exit that for a moment. So this was the section that was, there we go. This was scanned from the bottom. Okay, so you can see it was kind of sitting upside down while it was being scanned. Let me actually show you the frames of how this was done. So this was, the setup was that it was sitting on a crumpled sheet so that all of those folds of the fabric were used to help keep track of the object. So the bottom does have a lot of geometric features by itself, as you can see. So tracking generally won't be lost when you do have a lot of features like that, but just as a precaution to make sure that tracking would not be lost, which is why we still placed that sheet underneath so that those fabric folds can help the scanner to kind of stay still and not lose tracking. Like I said before, you can also, instead of using additional geometry, you could place markers around on the table around the object, and then use the markers to kind of hold tracking. So that is also possible. Since if you do want to get a lot of the kind of intricate detail, like you do in this skull, you could also, I could have also scanned the very inside bottom here with the Calibry Mini. And the Calibry Mini would have definitely had no problem getting all of these geometric features very clearly. But for our experiment today, I just have my Calibry Mini scan of the face kind of features. All right. Go ahead and select those again. There we go. All right. So here we are. I am combining kind of 5 different scans, and I am just setting my 3 points, and then adding each to base after I set those points. Now, you can actually see that I saved each of these results So I saved each of these projects with the results after I had aligned them, which is why right now you are seeing them already aligned if I click on any of these results. So after I had aligned them, I saved all of those projects, so I don't have to actually go back and redo that alignment algorithm, because that all of those actions were saved to all of my projects in my project tree open right now, which is why when I'm selecting all of them and I see my preliminary model, it is already aligned. So we highly recommend that you, once you have aligned all of your projects, just to be on the safe side, save all of them individually, just in case if the software ever crashes or something goes wrong, you do not have to redo all of that again. Okay, so to save us time, since I did alignment of all 5 scans, and you can see the scans are all quite large, about 4,000, between 3,000 and 4,000 frames. So to combine them all did also take about 15 minutes. So to save us time, I will be showing you the results. So since as I said, the lowest resolution for the regular Calibry is 0.6, and the lowest resolution for the Calibry Mini is 0.2. So if I'm combining scans kind of between those, I can set it to the absolute lowest resolution of the Calibry Mini. That is absolutely possible. But then the algorithm would take substantially longer, probably 20, maybe even 25 minutes. I did generate one result. This is on the 0.6, so this is the lowest resolution for the regular Calibry. But the general advice I like to give when combining Calibry and Calibry Mini is to find that perfect compromise of resolutions. So I try to set it kind of between my 0.6 and my 0.2, and this here is the result that was done with 0.4. So you can still see the mini features that were gathered from the front of the face. You can really see the teeth clearly, all of the dents, plus you see the whole skull shape really nicely from all of the sides and the back. So that 0.4 result did take about 15 minutes to generate. So like I said, because it is kind of on the lower resolution, and because I am combining a lot of scans, it took a bit of time. Also, as a side note, as I do see this question popping up quite a bit, for example, if I processed all of my scans and let's say I removed my additional geometry from each of my results, okay, which is good, it helps us to clearly see where we need to place the points when we align it. But prior to running our multiple finalization algorithm, please make sure to remove all of your additional geometry from the frames of each of your projects. Because while the individual results do have that additional geometry removed, once you actually combine the results in multiple finalization, it will take all of the information of the frames of each project. So any additional geometry that was placed around it would basically be on that result. So then you would have your one finalized mesh, but then you would have to take time to clean everything around it. So prior to running that, please remember to make sure to clean up all of the scans on the frames themselves. As always, please leave any and all of your questions in the YouTube chat. I am keeping an eye on that, and I'll be happy to answer anything you have. Okay. Thank you everyone for your time. If you weren't able to make it to this time slot, I will be doing one in the evening European time as well. It will be covering the same material. Now, if you have any questions about the software or any of our scanners, you can always send us an email at support@thor3d.com, and me and my colleagues would be happy to answer. I also left a link to the Calibry scanner on our website in the box below, so you can look at the specs of the Calibry and its accuracy specifications, and likewise you can browse our website to look at the specs of the Calibry Mini and to see kind of all of the sample scans that we have that were made with both the Calibry and the Calibry Mini. So we do have that little gallery as well. And once again, please check out all of our other videos on YouTube that were explaining the different features of Calibry and Calibry Nest, as well as previous webinars and kind of example cases. Like, for example, when we scanned a whole Porsche that was done in marker mode, then you can see the process of that. Oh, thank you so much for your time. So, have a nice day, everyone.